Welcome to Misano World Circuit, one of the most iconic and revered racing venues in the world. Nestled along the stunning Adriatic coast of Italy, this track is a true testament to speed, precision, and passion. Originally built in 1972, the circuit has evolved into a modern masterpiece, boasting a challenging 4.2-kilometer layout that tests both man and machine. With its combination of straights, tight corners, and elevation changes, Misano has become among racers and fans alike for a favourite. Today, it stands as a premier destination, of course, on the MotoGP calendar, hosting unforgettable moments in motorsport history. Get ready for an exhilarating evening of racing from Misano with myself, John Dalton, your lead commentator. Alongside me, making a return to the box, Matt Malcolm, with Stewie behind the cameras, and of course, all of our live stewards next door. Welcome, everyone.
Yeah, hello everyone. It's great to have everybody here at the start of the new Monday Championship. I gotta say, Misano has always been a thrilling, but I would say also a punishing track that can even catch up the best of drivers. And with everyone here in the new BMW M2 TCX cars, I think we'll be here for something special tonight. But I'm gonna say, John, I think for the track selections for this season, I think the BMW is the best track for it. I think even with having limited downforce, I think it's gonna be a great car to have with a little bit of door banging, a little bit of everything in between, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, of course, it's a bit of a kind of touring car-esque, platform, the M2 CS. Of course, it kind of dials back all those levels of downforce and really kind of relies on sheer driver skill as we see a mad scrabble for the pit lane exit. Everybody trying to get the favoured head of the queue, should we say, track position. Everybody weaving to generate some heat in their tyres. Of course, no tyre blankets with the M2 tonight. So again, it's going to be a kind of a test to who can bring those Pirellis into that magic window the fastest. Of course, 15 minutes on the clock. It's taken them 30 seconds to reach pit exit. And out we go with Andy Boardman in the number 69 Greased Weasel Racing entry. Of course, 27 drivers have signed up for the championship this time, and 26 of them have made it to the server. So only one absent driver on the grid tonight. But it's packed with talent and, of course, excitement. And, of course, we have a mix of experienced champions and hungry newcomers among the field tonight. So high-stakes battle, of course, first round on the championship, Matt. It's going to be a key round to score those, crucial championship points.
Yeah, it certainly is, especially if you want to get an early lead among the season, because after all, we do have a wide selection of tracks here for this championship, with us starting off at Misano. As we go through over to the rest of the season, you've got those different characteristics with the Red Bull Ring, Monza, Zolder, and even up to the grand finales of the Nürburgring and Spa. So not only you're onto this track, which is quite tricky, you've also got some of the easier tracks that might be more familiar with some of your ACC legends here. As we can see, with everybody else just starting to line up towards the end of their formation lap, trying to get enough heat into those tires to try and get themselves the best possible lap they can achieve. I think what I'm going to ask, who do you think might be the favourite for qualifying today?
Very hard to say with the names on the list. Of course, Andy Boardman, who we're riding on board with at the moment, Christoph Verstappen, Klaus Nyring, Christian Lindgren, Raphael Huell. Of course, all big names here as we ride on board, of course, with Andy Boardman. We're going to get to see a lap from the Misano World Circuit. Of course, turns 1 and 2. Very good passing place if you can get the run out of turn 16. Send it up the inside, but don't overcook these turns because it throws the rhythm quite hard off. The same here with turns 4, 5, and 6. You can see there wrestling the car the way through this slow complex, building up the speed, cranking it up. Be careful on the exit curb. Very easy to pick up a track limits warning, and of course the long drag. Turn 7, technically the kink in the middle of the straight, before of course the hard braking zone for turn 8. Again, a good passing place. Use the camber of the road. Of course, you see the amount of curbs Andy Boardman is using here at the moment. Again, Misano, of course, a motorcycle circuit more than anything. So again, the curbs nice and flat. Of course, motorbikes, that's ideal, and in cars even better. So it means you can really exploit all of the curbs and the track limits, both entry and exit curbs. through, of course, the complex of 9 and 10 before the run down towards turn 11, 12, and 13. These come in very quick succession in GT3 cars. A little bit of a slower pace, of course, in the M2s and the GT4s. Again, a big handful of brake, or big footful of brake, should we say, for turn 13, before drawing it up again for 14. Good passing place. If, again, your opponent makes a mistake through turn 13, you can really set it up for the inside of 14, and then the big kind of drag down towards the last corner. Pretty much all flat out in a GT3 car. Certainly going to be flat out here tonight as Andy Boardman tips it in to the banking of the last corner, using all of the exit curb as well. And the provisional lap time goes on the board for Andy Boardman, a 1:46.842. Les Stevenson comes through with Christian Lindgren in tow. Christopher Streppen, the next man through, goes straight up into P2 with a 1:47.167. Martin Lawrence, again, a name formidable to us here at RCI, part of the RCI esports roster, again, along with Christopher Streppen. So watch those two as they navigate their way through the Misano World Circuit. But as we said earlier, Matt, of course, no tyre blankets. So all of these times are going to be the kind of slower end of the field, should we say, at the moment. Give it another 5 minutes or so, we should see those lap times being fired in quite fast and quite quick.
Oh, I can certainly agree on that, especially with those having the lack of tire blankets. It's going to take a bit of time for the heat to get in, but what they also got to be anticipating of, it is a rather warm track today, with it being 29 degrees on track. You have to make sure they don't go and overcook those tires. Steve go into the number 16 car, Klaus, trying to make himself go through turn 10 to able to get himself as much power as he can through the down straights. But there, as you can see, you can try and get a little bit of that toe, because every minute or every second it counts here onto this track, especially if you're trying to get those tires warmed up. Looks to be as he going through turn 11 and going to turn 12, he's making a good line to that. He has to make sure he gets his braking point correctly, because if he doesn't, he can, as you said, he can go a bit too wide. As you can see, Andy Boardman coming up to the line again. Is he going to improve much more on his time towards the final straight? As we come across the line, it looks like he's gaining a bit of time, but also losing it on the last corner, and he does improve by an additional 2/10 on his last lap. Verstappen right behind him, trying to gain that extra time, but it looks like they might have been invalidated going around the corner.
Yeah, so very easy to do on the last quarter of Misano. You know, you tip the car in, want to jump on the power as early as you can, and too early, and of course you find yourself dragging over the exit curb and instantly dipping the tyres into a track limit warning. Now, a man here, Sebastian Brunier, we've not heard from this man in a while. He's been in the background of RCI and various communities around the ACC realm, dipping his toe into some LFM dailies now and again, but he is back with us here tonight at RCI, so excited to see what the Frenchman can do. Racing under, of course, the nearly on pace banner, comes to the line. P22 currently for Seb, jumps up into P18 with his first lap time being a 1:50.577, just behind the number 75. So still quite a few drivers, Matt, on the board, not yet set a time, and this man, one of them, Martin Lawrence, I can only assume that they're kind of trying to push these limits really early on, and they've just not managed to secure that kind of banker lap that we often see, of course, on the outlap drivers. Again, taking it kind of cautiously, finding the way, finding the grip levels as such on slightly colder tires before really gunning it. But some of these drivers have come out like a scolded cat. They are really trying to get every kind of second of the car alive, and do play the risk, of course, of not actually making a qualifying time, having to start from the back end of the grid.
Yeah, so if it was up to me, at least, if I was to go through my strategy, I would at least try and get a banker lap in, just able to get somewhere within that grid, so you can so if you're not able to push it much further, you can still keep yourself a bit either in the middle or near the front of the back. I mean, with some of these drivers here, they're just trying to push the absolute limits of here, but again, the tires might still be a little bit too cold or a little bit too hot to be able to go around towards these corners. As you can see with Phillips here in the RPMS Sim Sport car, trying to make his way around onto the final sector. We'll see if he can able to improve on his time that he gained. As he comes up towards the final corner, he just to make sure he doesn't go too wide, which he's able just to hook it in just right. So as he comes up across the line, is he able to improve? And he does. He gets himself up to P8 by gaining another 4/10 on his previous lap time. Gets Sebastian Bernier also coming up to finish his lap as well. Is he also going to improve massively? He does a bit. He gets another second on it, but it only gets him up by about a place at P19. We go up
Yeah.
towards Verstappen, over towards the first sector. He's trying to hook on. No, sorry, the second sector, going through turn 10, going through to the main straight. Try and get that power down early as he can. You can maximize top speed towards the end of the straight. But at the end of the day, if you're able to grab as much speed through those corners, that's what's going to give you the time.
Yeah, of course, it's a very kind of momentum-based track, Misano. Lots of kind of long drags between some of these corners, so corner exit and, and the amount of speed you can truly carry into a corner and out the other side is going to be the testament. So bravery certainly going to be on the card of traits, should we say, here tonight. And Christopher Streppen, of course, currently in P3. Not too far behind Klaus Nyring, but a good half a second off Andy Boardman's top time at the moment. Comes out the final turn, turn 16, propels himself towards the line. A little bit of traffic ahead might affect his next lap, but he does improve up into P2, but still 3/10 away from Andy Boardman. Just 1/10 or so clear of Klaus Nyring, and we know Nyring can be very competitive in these cars, as of course was the multi-class GT4 and TCX Cup that we ran not too long ago. And Christian Lindgren was another name in that field that did quite well under the banner of the TCX car. So some drivers more rehearsed than others here tonight, as Oleg Kalyanov comes towards the line in the number 63, improves ever so slightly up into P22, just behind Sebastian Brunier. Again, lots of gaps in the field, quite tiny when you do kind of break it down between each of the cars. I mean, we've got Matt Stevens, Richard Phillips, Byron and Ricciardo, and Callum Kerrigan all within a very small window of each other. We've got Nicholas Nordqvist and Peter Varga running the exact same lap time. So again, that's a rare feat that we do see every so often here at RCI, but it doesn't rear its head all too often. So those two are going to be locked almost bumper to bumper once the green flag, of course, drops. Just under 5 minutes to go in qualifying. Lots of drivers going to be seeking for their late improvements, as Raphael Huell, a driver that was looking very competent in the practice session, Matt, but pace just seems to have fallen off ever so slightly. Of course, wondering if lots of drivers in the practice session weren't really attempting a qualifying run. Maybe Huell was. That's kind of given a false picture of where Huell truly sat in the field, but definitely a driver that I'd expect to see a little bit further forward than where he is now.
Oh, it certainly does. I mean, it doesn't hurt to always show your hand at the practice sessions, but again, sometimes it's best just to keep it hidden, because you never know what the rest of the competition is gonna hold. As we can see currently, that Raphael Huell is actually getting a much better run on this lap than he has on some of the other previous laps that might send him up further into the grid. So we come up towards turn 11 and 12. He just needs to hold it on for the remainder of that lap, just so he can be able to hold on to the time he has gained from the first and second sector. It also helps as well, he's also got that draft from the RPMS car straight ahead of him. And as we come up towards the final corner, if he can able to keep it on the inside line and make sure he's not invalidating that lap, he can get himself a pretty nice time going through into the across the line. He does. He gets himself up to P2, gaining himself by over nearly half a second, being a 10th off from Andy Boardman. Just means you know that the game is on for provisional pole. Andy Boardman is still the one to top off, but Huell and Verstappen is very close from catching up to them.
Ways Andy Boardman at the top early on these Monday champs, but certainly drivers do tend to find their feet later on in the season. So Andy Boardman typically starts well and then becomes the kind of competitor's favorite, should we say, halfway through the season. But Raphael Huell certainly looking like the man that can challenge him here today. Just over 1/10 of a second off entirely. And Christian Lindgren, of course, as we mentioned earlier on, a man that we're kind of familiar with in the realm of the TCX class. Of course, last time when we ran TCX cars with the Monday TCX and GT4 multi-class, Christian Lindgren coming in third, Raphael Huell coming in second. So of course those drivers very well rehearsed in what it takes to win in these cars. Of course, Les Stevenson had a brief stint, Tom Shipston as well, Richard Phillips and Byron Kerrigan as well in the field in that championship. So lots of drivers returning to a repeat, should we say, with the M2CS. So those in theory be a little bit stronger than the remainder of the field. Of course, Les Stevenson up in P6 at the moment, just behind Lindgren, just ahead of Martin Lawrence, and then a big gap back to Nicholas Nordquist, who we'd expect to see a little bit higher for the Sim Brothers Racing entry. Meanwhile, though, Christian Lindgren rounds off his current lap, coming through the last few turns, of course, of 15 and into 16. Got to keep it clean over the entry curb, not too much, and then not too much on the exit curb either. Comes towards the line, a brief flash of a yellow flag. Another driver back to the pit lane. Across the line he goes. It's quicker, but not enough to make up that gap. Draws him a little bit closer to Nyring, but still Nyring with that upper edge. Pulls himself away, though, from the Roker Poker, aka, of course, Les Stevenson, down in P6. So looking very competitive towards the top. Just under a minute to go, Matt, and plenty of cars on the circuit map. On the right-hand side, of course, grey dots showing as valid laps. So lots of people trying to seek that late improvement currently.
Yeah, as I saw on the map as well, we saw Mike Rifford trying to get an additional lap in, but he just lost it at about turn 10 from the looks of it. So he's not going to be able to improve much from where he is at P19. You see, Verstappen's also trying to go further upon the limits and try and make sure he can get that provisional pole. As with seconds to go, there's not really much else that he can do, as this will be his final lap that he can attempt. But there's still a couple of drivers that are going to be crossing the line to be able to get their final laps in. With Verstappen in the car at the minute, he's making a massive gain at the first start the second sector as well, with it being 3/10 at the minute. So this could be our provisional pole lap if he can hold it on together, or even gain a little bit more if he continues on from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So looking very strong in the first couple of sectors. Lost a little bit of time through the kind of turns 9 and 10 before he came out onto the back straight. Led a little bit of time as well, so not the best run out down this long drag towards the back end of the circuit. Of course, turns 12 and 13. There's a car ahead. That's Sebastian Brunier. I'm sure he's going to be very heads up as to what is going on, and he does. Pulls off to driver's left. Very sensible move from Seb there. Certainly hasn't lost the touch of awareness in his hiatus from ACC. Comes down to the final corner. Christopher Streppen in the 747. Everybody else back in the pit lane or taking the checkered flag. Can we see a late improvement from the Belgian driver? Towards the line he goes, and we do. A very small margin towards Andy Boardman, though, Matt. That was a very competitive lap. Boardman still on a valid time, I believe, seeking to try and cement himself, should we say, into that pole position, dragging the brakes quite a lot through the last turn, trying to get the weight shifted forward onto the nose. Across the line, Andy Boardman goes, and it is a good improvement there. So even if Christopher Streppen made the pole, it would have been bested probably by Andy Boardman. Again, a very good lap from the British driver there. Driver pulling into the pit lane to practice the mandatory stop, and the last car to cross the line here. So these are your final results from qualifying. Of course, Andy Boardman towards the top. We then got Christopher Streppen. Interestingly, not a fastest sector to his name at all. Raphael Huell in third. Klaus Nyring in fourth, followed by Christian Lindgren. Les Stevenson, followed by Martin Lawrence and Callum Kerrigan. Tom Shipston and Stefano Ricciardo rounding out your top 10. Nicholas Nordquist, we then see, of course, the first of the RPMS cars in second, sorry, of the RPMS cars, Jan Manzo in 12th. Rob Franken, a name that we keep seeing back in ATC more and more in recent days. Great to see Rob back with us. Matt Stevens, followed by Ollie Mulder, Richard Phillips, Matthias Byron, of course, Peter Varga and Mike Redford. They're normally a formidable duo we do see battling time and time again here. I believe they've set the exact same lap time. That didn't change through the session. Of course, we've got the Lundqvists there in the 75 and the 999, tied at the hip, almost on their time. Kalyanov, Brunier, Foster, and Verzakov round out, of course, your grid for today. 27 drivers on the official sign-up, and, of course, 26 on the track here today. So lots of drivers seeking those early championship points, of course, where they can. And we've had a question in the YouTube chat, quite active tonight. Welcome everybody, of course, here to RCI TV. Some familiar names that we do like seeing time and time again. We've had a question from Joe Dorber, of course, on the mandatory pit stop. As always with RCI, we do, of course, enforce a mandatory pit stop to kind of shake up the competition and throw an element of strategy into the mix. So every driver, of course, must add 1 litre of fuel during their pit stop. That's with a fixed refueling time of 25 seconds. So whether, of course, you drop 1 litre, 50 litres, 100 litres, still going to cost you 25 seconds, meaning tires are only an additional 5 seconds. And of course, without tire warmers on the M2s, that's going to be something you're going to have to debate with yourself as you go around lap after lap. Is it going to be worth it by the time I bring the Pirellis back in? 2 to 3 laps, of course, to get them in that magical window of operation. Is it even going to be worth it? Dependent, of course, how you start. It's going to be a call that you're going to have to make as and when it comes. And of course, plenty of time loss, as we always see, Matt, in the pit lane. It really shows who practices these pit entries and who doesn't in the field.
Oh yeah, it certainly does. And with a track like this, you could have to be careful because sometimes the pit board can catch you without you even realizing it. Especially, you don't want to be catching any drive-throughs or stop-go 30 penalties. But with this here, with obviously everybody having their pit choice of either taking the tires or sticking with the 25-second fueling time, as you said, it does give that element of strategy into this series. But again, it really all sort of depends on how the car feels, how your tires are going to be coping for the rest of the race. So as our drivers will be lining up, they'll be thinking about how whether or not they go for the long game or play it short and try and be as fast as they can.
Yeah, it's certainly an interesting call to make, isn't it? Do you want to hit as soon as the window opens? Do you want to take a little bit of time, see what your rivals do, and then come in kind of separately, or you just want to try and eke out the pit window as long as possible? Which, of course, often we do see here at RCI. Of course, despite what the board says in the top side of Andy Boardman's windscreen, he is your pole sitter. So ignore that one. Everything seems to be shuffled off by about a position or so. Of course, Andy Boardman to the left. We've got Christopher Streppen to the right. Again, drivers that we've seen time and time again come together in their own fights within these weekly series that we do, of course, run here at RCI. And of course, the RCI calendar this week is back firing on all cylinders. So if you do want to get involved, there's bound to be something for you over on the website. Wednesday sees the continuation of the iRacing Multi-Class Sprint Season 1. That's heading to Alton Park, where we're going to see the odd combination of LMP3s take to the track with GT4s. Very own Benjamin Harman, of course, Stewie behind the cameras tonight, took victory over Michał Alabuhin and Ermas Erkma in LMP3. Meanwhile, it was Tristan Bullwinkle beating a name I've not seen in a while. That's Joe McCauley from Milton Tomlinson Dennis in GT4. So that's still very early days, the iRacing champ. So if you don't want to get involved, you have only missed one round there. Thursday this week, in theory, should see our GT4 Sprint Season 1 begin at Brands Hatch. Currently, last time I looked last night, 14 drivers. I think that's maybe gone up to 15 as of tonight signed up, including myself and Matt. So if you do want to have a bit of a race with the commentary team, that's where you're going to find myself and Matt. Of course, GT4s, reduced downforce car. I think it's 30-minute races as well. So again, no mandatory pit stop, flat out 30-minute races from flag to flag. So that should be really fun on that one. And of course, Saturday this week, it's the big one. Of course, it's the return of the RCI 6 Hours Esports Championship. Of course, join us here on RCI TV for all of the action, featuring, of course, your favorite teams, including Veloce, Samantha Tan Racing, West Competition Racing, Renvelton, Team Nitro, and Williams, just to name a few. Of course, 6 rounds, limited tyre sets, custom BOP, plus an €8,000 prize pool on the line. This will be one, of course, you do not want to miss as we head to Kyalami for round 1, with, of course, practice beginning at 11 a.m. UK time, and stream normally follows not too long after that one. So keep your eyes peeled on all the channels for all the action. And of course, if you do want to drop in and sign up for any races at any time, you can of course do that over on the website. That's racerci.com. And just last night, Saturday Night Owl Season 19 sign-ups also opened on the website, kicking off at the Nürburgring GP on September 14th with 5 rounds yet to be announced. 25-second fixed refueling window with a 90-minute finale. This is, of course, a championship aimed at, as the name suggests, Unite Owls. However, also towards those in a different time zone, so it's the perfect time to get involved with us here at RCI if our normal weekly schedule does not suit. But of course, back to the action tonight. Plenty of tyre weaving, tyre warming going on, lots of brake dragging, speeding up, slowing down very viciously. ABS levels probably dialed up to get even more brake heat into the M2. You can see there Christopher Streppin really trying to psych out Andy Boardman, almost generating more tyre temperature than, of course, the number 69. Cars begin, I think, to grid up side by side, and it's going to be a close one tonight, Matt. Of course, Boardman on the front row, Verstappen alongside, Huell in the background with Nyring and Lindgren. I think top 5 could be any of those drivers I've just named on the top step of the podium in an hour's time.
Oh, definitely. I do think that we're probably going to see a little cheeky move from Verstappen at turn 1. That's my hands down bet on this race for tonight, as that's something that might be guaranteed. But at the end of the day, if you can't get the lead at turn 1, sometimes that might be all you need. But again, there's an element of strategy to play with at this race. So we'll see what happens at the start of the race. You never know. As they come along to the final corners of the formation lap, they'll be getting themselves ready to go at nearly 70 kilometers an hour to waiting for those green lights to go.
Yeah, of course, side by side, a flash of the headlights there from Raphael Huell, almost trying to psych out his opponents. A very colourful grid here tonight. Plenty of liveries we recognise in the form, of course, Les Stevenson, Callum Kerrigan, and, of course, the RPMS colours alongside the Sim Brothers Racing. But we are green. Verstappen with a great launch already around the outside of Andy Boardman. But Boardman, on last of the late breakers, tries to make it up the inside. And this is the pinch point of Misano coming into turn 2. Everybody checking up 3 wide in the background there. I think that's a couple of the RPMS cars getting involved with each other. Friendly fire is not on the cards tonight for them. Fingers crossed as we head down to the next pinch point, of course, of turn 4. The very slow complex. Got to be very patient here because, of course, everyone isn't on the same kind of tyre temperature. Some may have more grip than others, and you really do have to pay attention as to who is trying to make a sneaky move on you through that section. Down towards now turn 8, heavy braking zone, as we mentioned. It's a good passing place. We see a bit of side-by-side action in the background. I think that's between the 2 RPMS cars, possibly of Shipston and Stevens, as we've almost got flying formation in the mid-pack for those guys. And coming down towards turn 10, we've got a little bit of side-by-side action in the background. I think that's Ollie Mulder getting involved, trying to go the long way around of turn 10, and we've got somebody round, I think that is possibly Sebastian Brunier. That is not what I wanted to see on his debut race back into RCI, but towards the front, side by side, Tom Shipston goes with Nicholas Nordqvist in the number 137, and he's just about managed to make a defense. But you see the swarm behind. You've got Stevens and Manzo all sizing up the Sim Brothers entry car, so it's a little bit of team tactics possibly going on here. I wonder if Shipston is going to try and back up Nordqvist into Stevens and Manzo. Meanwhile, Ollie Mulder glued to the back of Rob Franken's car as they come through the last set of turns down into turn 16, single file. Of course, very hard to get a run through 15 unless you get a really good drive off the hairpin. It's almost impossible. You've got to kind of set yourself up for this complex into turn 1. But other than Sebastian Brunier, touch wood, relatively clean start, I'm going to say here, Matt. Of course, we normally see a bit of argy-bargy kind of touring car elbows out stuff forming when the clock ticks down and everybody starts getting that little bit desperate. But I think everybody has been relatively tame so far. This is what happened to Sebastian up the inside. That's Reiher on the outside. Just a little bit of a rub, and of course ACC collisions just being ACC collisions there. A little bit of a weird spin for Sebastian as his car got hooked up in the air. But other than Mr. Brunier taking a turn, that is a relatively clean start for round 1, I'd say.
Yeah, it's been relatively clean, as what most of our as nearly all of our drivers here in RCI, as everybody here is all are good in their own way, as long as they all kept themselves clean in every way, shape, and form. You can see with Verstappen leaning ahead, you got Andy Boardman still trying to stick to the back of him, trying to get that toe to see if he can able to make a squeeze into turn 12 and 13. But it seems like there's a yellow flag for 75 just at the back of turn 10. It looks like some spun out. Would be But as you can see, got Boardman slowly peering. You can. Oh, it looks. That's a pretty bad front end of the BMW. You got a spin. Oh, looks like it took a spin, and then there was basically a lot of cars that didn't anticipate that. So there's going to be a lot of damage for some of the cars here as they go onwards towards the end of the straight. That's going to cost them a bit of time and a bit of speed on the end of those straights.
Yeah, of course, bodywork flapping isn't ideal in that scenario. That looked like Riha, possibly Lundqvist involved in that one as well. That's a Lundqvist in the number 75 Sim Brothers entry. But meanwhile, towards the front, Christopher Streppen not quite stretching his legs in the format that we typically see. We normally see kind of Chris run away from the field, but Andy Boardman certainly keeping him honest. Through the tight and twisties, Andy Boardman's car looks much kind of more planted and settled to those direction changes. Looks like he's got a much kind of bitier front end than Christoph Verstappen does. And down into turn 8, Verstappen's going to have to go defensive. Boardman tries to go the long way around. Klaus Neuring and Raphael Huel in the background with prime seats to this fight. Should it really kick off, those are going to be the guys that capitalize the most on it. Boardman still chomping at the bit behind Verstappen. Tries to go the long way around again. Does the old up and under, the old switcheroo. Tries to get a better drive off the corner down the straight. And I think he's just about managed to pull alongside. That's going to give him the inside line into the next few turns. Front row seats here, riding on board with Raphael Huel. Of course, Klaus Neuring just ahead there, and he has the front row seats as to what is going on. Boardman kind of, I don't know if he's just not got the top end that Verstappen has got, but certainly can't keep it alongside everybody. Constantine is up for turn 13, and Klaus Neuring even going defensive into 14 from, of course, Raphael Huel in the background. A big armful of oversteer. That's going to hamper his run, and you see how much the leaders are kind of pulling away already through turns 15 and 16. It's not an ideal thing to get the oversteer out of the hairpin, and is exactly what it does to you. Puts you under pressure. Of course, Raphael Huel, the fastest man on the grid at the moment, indicated, of course, by the purple number 4 next to his name. And meanwhile, it's all kicking off in the background here. This is Peter Varga, I believe, Ollie Mulder getting involved with one of the RPMS cars, one of the Sim Brothers cars, number 100, if the roof number is correct. And it looks like Mulder tried to give the space to the inside, was a little bit too generous on doing so into the side of one of the RPMS cars, and unfortunately a kind of half lazy induced spin there. But Mike Redford down the pit lane in the number 95. Fingers crossed, drivers in the server tonight have noticed there is no mandatory pit stop, of course, indicated by the green number, the green board, sorry, next to the number on the timing tower on the left-hand side of your screen. So Mike Redford maybe just not feeling it tonight. I did say earlier on he had been drinking some, and maybe it wasn't a good mix. So maybe he's just not going to continue this race. Does currently sit still in the pit lane, so maybe just pulled the door down and called it a day on that one, Matt.
No, it looks like he's driving off it again. He's leaving. It looks like he's leaving the pit lane just now. I think he just might have not catched on the minimum pit requirements not being activated for this race. So I think when he drove into the pits, I think that's when he soon saw he made his mistake. And if you go towards Shipston at turn 10 and Callum Kerrigan, well, it's a race replay for another instant BMW off the track. I'm just trying to see which number that was. You can see that's in 280. So it looks like the car went off. The number 280, which is Callum Kerrigan, went off turn 10. We're not unsure if it was due to either a driver error or if he's been hit off. You can see even Nicholas is trying to make sure he's trying to get past the RPMS guys, trying to see if he can find a space within the inside, but he gets cut off at the very last second. But it's still early games here with still 52 minutes on the clock. There's still plenty of time to try and take full advantage of the strategy. See with Andy Boardman still right behind Verstappen, trying to get the better exit off the corners to make sure he can able to get himself side by side. Because if he get himself in a position where he can maybe etch himself onto the back of his car, he might be able to make a little bit of a dive to try and secure the lead. Well as that, you got Nyring also right behind as well, trying to take advantage to any sort of mistakes that either one of those two drivers can. But again, you've got Huel to also throw him off the race too. Oh, as you
Yeah,
see, Huel's making a turn in at turn 10. Is he able to get ahead of him? He is ahead, but it has to make sure he can hold it going for the long straight, as whether or not he can keep it. Still side by side, but it looks like Niring's just getting a little bit of edge over towards turn 10. And you can see with Andy Borman and Verstappen try and make sure that either of them can keep the lead, but it looks like Borman's able to hold him off at turn 11. Whether or not Verstappen's able to take him at turn 12, trying to make him getting on the inside line, try and make sure he can get the better exit, but Boardman looks like he's able to hold off, but it looks like Huel's been knocked off. Oh, I wonder why. Oh, it looks like he lost it on his own, but there, Boardman's able to secure that lead, is now in a good position to hold off for the remainder of the race.
Verstappen very wide out of turn 16 there. We think he'll possibly lost it all on his own. It did look like he just kind of gassed the car up a little bit too kind of quick, and rear end of the BMW stepping out and just sending him to the inside. Comes down the pit lane, so not sure if he's going to retire the car, or again another driver that hasn't quite noticed the mandatory pit stop requirements aren't on the server for tonight's race. Martin Lawrence now finds himself at the back of this queue, and a mistake from Boardman. Boardman has gone off through turn 5, I believe there. I'm wondering if we've just seen a kind of repeat of the old Raphael Huel kind of too early on the throttle, looped it around, but that's allowed Niring with the run down towards turn 8. Christian Lindgren also chomping at the bit. He's got Martin Lawrence on the underside, a bit of a dark horse come out of nowhere here has Martin Lawrence. He's been sat back patiently waiting and watching, and he's decided now is his time to strike, and he's trying to go the long way around of Andy Boardman. Boardman's trying to close the gap to Niring, and Lawrence has been tapped by Christian Lindgren, I believe. That's through turn 10, coming out onto the straight, so that's going to be a good chunk of momentum lost. And let's have a look what happened here. It was always going to end in tears. It was just getting very close, and Lindgren saw a gap, went for it, and of course the ABS maybe of the BMW not allowing the brakes to be fully applied and try and get that nose turned in of the car that little bit more as they went through turn 10. Contact was made. Very unfortunate indeed for both drivers there. Of course, logically, normally in a race, very respectful drivers in their own right. So a little bit peculiar there. Stewie making us aware, no contact logged for Andy Boardman through turn 4. So again, that looks like a self-induced mistake as we head towards the back end of the field. Fights are plenty here. This is Foster, P19, at the head of this kind of train that we've got forming. Of course, just behind him, Kalyanov in the number 63, Verzakov, who of course had that big front end smash. That's lots of damage across the front end of the 74. Foster's gone wide, tries to come back on. Kalyanov pinches, and that's allowed Verzakov to take a run down towards the turn 1. Around the outside he goes. Just about makes it stick. Lots of racing room given between these two. Of course, Sebastian Brunier now getting back in the mix after his earlier incident. Of course, now picking up on everyone else's misfortune that's been involved in fights along the way. And that's Lundqvist just ahead in the number 75. So Brunier is going to try and go the long way around. But now we've got a check up here. This is Foster getting involved once again with Kalyanov through the slower section. And just about managing to fend off Foster, and that's going to allow Verzakov the run now down into turn number 8. He's going to have to go, in theory, the long way around. Foster goes one way, goes the other, leaves the door open. Verzakov sees the gap. An excellent move, just about manages to scrub enough speed off, but Foster with a much faster run through the corner bumps into the back, and we have it all over again coming down into turn 9 and 10. Of course, Verzakov around the outside. Foster, the much tighter, kind of faster preferred line. Sebastian Brunier in the background has already dispatched of Lundqvist, and now he looks to get that pink machine in and amongst this fight, but flicking towards the front, Andy Boardman on Klaus Niring. This is going to allow Christopher Streppen to escape up the road, and he has done so, some 1 second plus to the good. As we come across the line, we'll get an updated timing gap there, and that's going to be 2.4 seconds, almost double the gap in a lap, with Boardman and Niring fighting amongst themselves. It's getting very dicey down into turn 1 and 2. Of course, Boardman the inside to the outside, then becomes the inside once again for turn 3, and Niring with a big slide out of 3 manages to hold on to it, and that's going to allow Boardman to go through. Meanwhile, in this mid-pack, we've got Callum Kerrigan, Rob Franken, We've also got Byron, I think, just at the back with front row seats to this whole fight. Ricciardo getting involved. This is now a five-way fight, basically for P10, I think, P11 maybe. Matt, this is really kicking off.
Oh, there's no shy in having some excitement here. It's like we're having a five-way fight for the mid pack as well as the fight for Boardman and Nine Ring at front. It's it's quite a lot of excitement here for tonight with these BMWs. They never fail to show any sort of boredom in these races. Because again, it's like you said earlier, it's keeping that momentum up is what makes you able to take those overtakes around there. As we can see, we've actually got a few penalties actually coming in as well. So currently we have a few warnings for a couple drivers, but you can see there's a 5-second penalty for one of the cars, which is car 77. So he got a 5-second penalty for forcing 137 off at turn 8 at lap 3. As we go into the interior of Nordqvist's car, you can see he's trying to catch the other RPMS car and trying to make sure he can get himself ahead of that, so he can, with Stevens ahead. Even though he's got the 5-second penalty, it still would be beneficial to be ahead of him to get the clean air, so you can carry the momentum up, so you can carry on the speed, so you can catch Les.
Another penalty that we've just about seen actually. Reiher in the bottom of the timing tower. He's just, of course, upped himself from P24 to 23. That is 4. That's just a 777 incident for avoidable contact. So clearly getting into someone, stewards deemed it as avoidable, and of course the 10-second penalty coming in there. I think that was for possibly the Sebastian Brunier incident. We've got plenty more racing incident, minor contact, but that wasn't minor at all from Nicholas Nordqvist on Martin Lawrence. That was full elbows out racing into turn 4, and of course Lawrence will shuffle up into P7. Let's catch a race replay. Lawrence more than alongside, I would say, and Nordqvist there, number 137, Nicholas Nordqvist, just turning in a little bit too soon, not realizing maybe that Lawrence had fully gone for the move and committed, and contact was made, but both drivers keeping it on the straight and narrow. No harm, no foul. Meanwhile, Sebastian Brunier getting very aggressive towards the back of Verzakov, coming out of turn 6, of course, through turn 7 on the straight down into turn 8. Verzakov looks like he's braked a little bit later. Can he get the car drawn up in time? Sebastian's going to be very wise to this, gives him the space, gives him the inside line, and tries to set himself up, I can only assume, for a good run down the straight, darting left and right. Brunier to the inside. Verzakov having to go the long way on the defense, and that's exactly what we were talking about with, of course, the front end push of this car. You try and trail brake it into a corner. The ABS just doesn't like what you're trying to do, and kind of end up getting wider and wider. That's how you really lose time. You've got a pack forming with Mulder, of course, Peter Varga, and Phillips in the background as well, and Byron is only just up the road. So typical of the one make series, Matt, that we see time and time again. We always talk about it. It's kind of train racing, isn't it? It's the pack racing mentality that you kind of get involved in these championships. You kind of see everybody spread out a little bit, then they come together, they have a fight, people get drawn into it, kind of like what we're seeing here. This is Stevens and Lawrence, but of course in the background you've got Nordqvist and Lindgren. So these two start squabbling, losing time. That's going to bring the two cars behind in. Lawrence makes a forceful move through turns 5, tries to go the long way of turn 6, but a dab of the brakes on the exit. It's going to be who gets to turn 8 the fastest, and I think Stevens still just about has enough of an overlap. Will he try last of the late breakers down into turn 8? He does. He draws alongside Lawrence. He's not taking this one line down. There's a little bit of a rub as they come through the mid corner on the exit, and exactly what I spoke about. Look who's been drawn into this fight. It's now Nordqvist and Lindgren in the background.
Yeah, certainly. It looks like Nordqvist and Lindgren's actually trying to play it fair in order to make sure that they can succeed on trying to get to take advantage of Lawrence and Stevens. And see Martin Lawrence is trying to make sure he can that toe, but just not able to make it up just yet. He might be able to take an interest into turn 11 and turn 12, but he's having to back off as a little bit squarely at the rear. I think I saw a little bit of a flash from Martin Lawrence as well. A little bit agitated from that. Because again, he's going to be under pressure from the two cars behind him, but if he can get past Stevens, he might be able to secure himself a little bit of clean air and a little bit of a safety net behind.
Lawrence certainly kind of chomping at the bit, isn't he, of Matt Stevens. He knows that, of course, the penalty for 5 seconds is there. And again, going to have to pull out 5 seconds between now and the checker flag to stay clear of losing a position. But the pack chasing behind Stevens, I don't think that's going to be on the cards tonight. And Lawrence certainly looking very racy. Of course, Nordqvist and Lindgren essentially racing for the same team under the Tim brothers banner. So again, they're going to be working together in this fight. All the meanwhile, of course, it's going to be the battle of honors between RCI Esports and RPMS Sim Sports. There's a little bit, there's another hip and shoulder, isn't there, from Lawrence? He's elbows out tonight. You know, he's taken no prisoners, and Nicholas Nordqvist has also managed to take a position away, and that's going to allow now Christian Lindgren to size up the back of Matt Stevens again. If Stevens tries to get on the attack with Nordqvist, that's going to bring Lindgren back into this kind of trio. And fingers crossed, Martin Lawrence can just kind of drive away from this pack now and set his sights up the road, of course, onto Tom Shipston. But 5.5 seconds, it's the kind of big gaps that we're speaking about that, of course, open up and close up when certain cars start fighting amongst themselves. I mean, now Andy Boardman has dispatched of Klaus Nyring. He's brought the gap down to Christoph Verstappen that little bit. Of course, Nyring with the big slide backed out of the fight earlier on. And Matt Stevens has Christian Lindgren firmly buried in his exhaust as they come down towards the turns 12 and 13 on this one. And Lindgren sees a little bit of a gap. He tries to get the move there. And of course, Matt, we mentioned earlier on in the broadcast, of course, these curbs are very kind of flat. They're designed essentially for, of course, motorcycle racing more than car racing. But it does mean that cars can pretty much use every single inch of curb. And it's interesting watching from the helicam, of course, all the different lines that drivers are taking. Some are using a bit more curb than others. Some are kind of steering clear at some points, but everybody in a train tends to follow the car exactly ahead. So you begin to kind of learn maybe where you're losing time on your opponents by racing in these packs as well.
Yeah, again, it all sort of really depends on how they take the lines as well. Because again, Misano is a very punishing track. If you're not careful, because you will pick up the track cuts if you're not careful. So I think some of the people are a little bit more hesitant to try not get the drive-through penalty. But again, if they're following some of the other drivers, they're trying to find that extra limit to what they've been able to achieve before. But you have to be careful with some of these corners. While they are flat curbs, there are some sausage curbs that could throw some people off, which I think which has thrown me off in the past. I have driven GT4s around here, which if you're on very low or no TC at all, it can catch you off and take you in a good spin. We can see with everybody else, as they seem to be holding on as best as they could, as they're trying to chase down the faster drivers. But I think with everybody else, you can see that the pack is starting to chase up for the guys at P9 and P8. As we go and watch a replay of Foster coming up towards the turn. Is he going to try and make a late braking point? No, he's not, but no, it looks like nothing really too much was going on there. We can see with Christian Lindgren was going to be appearing right on the back of Stevens. As we go switch over towards Shipston and Kerrigan, they are going to be trying to find each other for... No, sorry. Sorry, it was for Les Stevenson. They're both... See that both Callum Kerrigan and Steve Stephenson are holding the same liveries as each other, but Shipston has been really consistent. He's trying to hold off the back of Stephenson for the last wee while, trying to make sure that if he makes any mistakes, definitely take full advantage of it. Oh, as you can see, he's trying to look like he was going to be making a little bit of a appearance of himself, just enough to show his bumper off. But again, it's the momentum that he needs. Because if we remember what we spoke about earlier, it's not about making sure you can overtake him, it's whether or not you can keep up that momentum in order to make the overtake stick.
Yeah, absolutely, Matt. We saw earlier on, of course, Christoph Verstappen and Andy Boardman going side by side down the back straight, and Boardman just didn't have enough drag, maybe too much downforce on the car. Just couldn't keep that momentum.
Oh,
there's
that's
contact.
a big hit.
That's Richard Phillips into Peter Varga. Varga finds the wall on driver's left. Let's ride on board with Phillips here, of course, around the outside of turn 6. Tries to do the old up and under, and I think Varga just parked it in the middle of the road. Wasn't really expecting the Team Monkey racing car to be there, and very unfortunate coming together there. Varga hard into the wall. That's going to be a big time loss. Just trying to spot him on the board. I think he's already possibly, nope, still running in P15. I beg your pardon. On that one. But yeah, certainly going to be a big impact to the front of the car. That's not going to be driving all too pleasantly now as we see Ollie Mulder sizing up Ricciardo. Of course, guys earlier on kind of locked together in their own fight. Cars have scattered from around them. Of course, Byron managed to escape clear up the head of the road there just to try and get away. We do have a few more penalties coming in for a few more people. I think Christian Lindgren, the latest driver to have picked one up. Of course, we do have live stewards with us here tonight. They're sat opposite us in the room next door, and we appreciate, of course, each and every one of them for judging incidents on our behalf, because it's very easy just to kind of cast over and have a few looks at it through a race replay and call it done and dusted. Of course, the live stewards will pour over more angles than us. They'll pour over inputs. Of course, even look at previous laps maybe to see how the inputs have differed. And just trying to find the Christian Lindgren incident. It was for lap 6, turn 10, involving the 171 and the 48. The 171, of course, of Martin Lawrence. And I think what we're going to try and see here, this was when it all got a little bit too kind of close for comfort down into turn 10. Of course, the turning of Martin Lawrence, and big time loss there for both drivers. I think Lindgren did wait up a little bit, so hindered himself in that aspect as well. But Les Stevenson still fending off Tom Shipston. As you said, Stevenson going to be keeping up momentum as much as he can to try and avoid, of course, Shipston's slipstream bonus that he is, of course, getting behind. Both drivers looking equally as racy as one another. But, of course, you can't forget Martin Lawrence in the background. If these two, again, start squabbling, and then going to see the three-car train beginning to form. Of course, 6.5 seconds to the good of Klaus Nyring ahead. Of course, he's 3.2 seconds off the back of Andy Boardman as Tom Shipston also comes down the pit lane. I'm wondering how many drivers have realized, Matt, that there is, of course, no mandatory pit stop, although just a pit window. Of course, if you haven't fueled enough, you're going to be at that point now where you need to come in for some fuel. Lots of drivers typically, split the race down the middle. So, 34 minutes to go. We're about that point where you're going to start seeing drivers coming in. Ollie Mulder, again, another car that's come through. So if you're paying attention in your kind of UI, might have realized it and managed to put a full tank of fuel in, and at which case, of course, you're going to be able to go all the way to the end. And more trouble for Peter Varga here. Let's have a ride on board as he comes out of turns 14 through turn 15, clatters the sausage curbing, and exactly as you said, Matt, very easy to upset the car. You've done it in a GT4, and now Peter Varga has done it in a TCX as well. And that's just going to add insult to injury for round 1 for the Team Monkey Racing driver.
Yeah, but you have to remember, it is only round 1. There's still plenty of rounds left to grab as many points as you can to get yourself as further up on the standings as you can go. With Christian Lindgren is still right behind Stevens, so if he's going to be able to pass Stevens, he's going to still have to get the 10-second gap he'll need to make in order to get past them. Again, that all sort of depends on whether or not the guys ahead are taking a full load or taking a half load by mistake. Because at the end of because if you go by it, a lot of the drivers will be making mistakes as the race goes on, with the tires starting to wear down for them, not expecting go all the way for a full stint on a single set of tire unless you've already prepared for it. You can see with Christian Lindgren is still holding strong towards the two drivers up ahead with Nordqvist and Stevens. Again, it's whether or not he can able to get past them and get the extra 10 seconds. See, with Longfist is able to hold off, is trying to get past the number 74 Vizikov, trying to make sure he can keep the momentum going through turn 12 and 13. If he's able to hold off onto the speed that he has, he can able to then try and get a little bit closer towards getting that extra points. You can see Callum Kerrigan's on the outside line trying to get past Mike Redford as well. You can see trying to make it go through turn 10. It's whoever who has better power in the straight, which it looks like it's going towards Kerrigan. He looks like he's able to get the better on the straight. But Mike Redford also holds the better position on the inside. It looks like there's still very even through turn 11. As we come up to turn 12, it looks like Mike Redford just pulls out just at the last second in order to keep himself safe for another lap.
Yeah, safe for another lap, but Kerrigan looked very wide at turn 13, so I'm wondering if that's going to be a track limits warning, of course, given by the game or not. Time will tell as the clock ticks down, but Andy Boardman, he's been chomping at the bit, lap after lap after lap, chomping away at the lead of Christoph Verstappen, and he now finds himself back on the rear of the number 747. So what we saw at the beginning of the race, we're about to see all over again as they tip their way through turns 16, of course, across the exit curve. Got to be very careful. It certainly looks like Andy Boardman's car is set up more for cornering than it is for straight line speed, and Christoph's car on the opposite end seems to be a little bit skinnier in the aero setup to really get the legs kind of going as we get down towards the back straight, which is probably why Andy Boardman looks so confident through this slower turn of turns 4, 5, and 6. But then by the time they got side by side through turns 10, it was still Christoph Verstappen down the straight that did have the overall advantage. A big wiggle there from Christoph as he really pushes the limits of the number 747. Looks to go a little bit defensive, but I think Boardman is close enough to really send one up the inside just yet. If I know Andy Boardman, he's going to kind of bide his time a little bit. He's going to figure out where Christoph is that little bit slower, a little bit weaker, and then he's probably going to be launching a kind of full-scale attack. Andy Boardman in kind of attack mode is very, very aggressive, and it's certainly a driver that I wouldn't want to be near as he looms ever closer coming out of turn 10, tucking in to the back of the M2 of Verstappen, trying to size up where he's going to go, maximize the slipstream as they come down to the three successive right-handers of 11, 12 and 13. Is he going to be brave enough to send it into 14? I don't think so. Christoph, though, going a little bit shallow in the previous corner, opens up the door that ever so slightly. He runs deep. That's going to allow Boardman side by side as they come into turn 15. Boardman the long way around. There's no grip there. The road cambers towards the inside, and Verstappen once again prevails, and he peels off to the pit lane. That's going to be a fuel stop, I can only imagine, for Verstappen. That allows Andy Boardman into the lead. And can he now, Matt, stretch his legs, drill in some fast lap times, and see if he can pull away from Christoph Verstappen? Or on the opposite side, this is an interesting theory. Maybe it wasn't to do with the amount of aero these guys are running. Maybe it was down to pure fuel load, and Andy Boardman was that little bit heavier than Verstappen as they came out onto the straight.
Yeah, it certainly looks like Andy Boardman's times have been getting better through the race. Again, he still is going to be dealing with a little bit of tire degradation through the midpoint of the race. As we go into 28 minutes to go, he's still got a good 3.5 second gap to Nyring, as you see him just on the back there with Steffensen, an additional 10 seconds behind Nyring as well. So I think if he's able to go to the end of the race just with the tires and the fuel he's got, I think Andy Boardman will be in a very good spot for the race. We can see between P5 to P9, everybody seems to have stopped, including Verzikov at P10 as well, also taking the stop, which means not very many people in this race today have actually kept an eye on the pit requirements not being activated for this particular race. See, Raphael Hugh will be able to take full advantage of everybody from Shipston all the way down to potentially all the way to the back of the grid, depending on how they've taken their tires or how they manage the fuel loads at the start of the race. They might take a really good advantage and score some extra points when they might have not have had due to some of the incidents or even some of the pace we might see early in the race.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, it's going to be this late stage that, of course, is going to be the crucial part as Klaus Nyring wiggles his way down pit lane. Andy Boardman continues to stay out at the moment. So, again, curious to know, is he fueled until the end? We're going to have to see if he is, and that's going to be a very big advantage, of course. Not taking a pit stop here going to save you a massive chunk of time as Stefano Ricciardo gets a little bit racy behind Mike Redford, tucks into the back of the number 95 going down into turn 8. Can he get a move on? Redford goes defensive. He senses something. Going to make Ricciardo go the long way around. Of course, the inside of turn 8 is cambered, so it almost sucks the car through. Very hard to go the high side through turn 8. Meanwhile, Ollie Mulder and Callum Kerrigan getting very close together as well as they come through turn 10. A little wiggle from Kerrigan. Mulder a little bit slower off the corner though, so it's kind of tit for tat at this point as they come down towards 11, 12 and 13. I don't think they're going to be close enough to get a move on, but of course in the mirror, Matthias Byron in the number 100 Sim Brothers Racing entry could get himself involved in this fight, and this is of course for P12 overall. There as Kerrigan goes wide once again, how many track limits he has now in the number 280. He's got to be bordering on at least 2 that we've possibly seen from the driver ahead there. We've got Stevenson and Manzo down the pit lane as we have a little flick through the splitter cams of various cars, and you can just see how close Ollie Mulder is here, and that's a terrifying sight. Alan Kerrigan and Les Stevenson on the back of that split livery car. I mean, that's almost akin to Snooty McFlude's famous face liveries, and Andy Boardman's in as well. He's been able to go that a little bit longer.
He tapped the wall as well.
Armco. We always see this here at Misano. At least one car decides to attack the Armco. Andy Boardman, here he comes. It's a bumpy entry. Just a little bit too much speed carried in. Grazes down the left side, the right side of the Armco. Gets it stopped for the pit limiter though. So now it's going to be the fastest kind of fuel filler first, shall we say, as Boardman comes into his box, stops, gets it underway. Of course, Christopher Streppen was the next car in line for him, and looking towards the track map, here is the 747. It's coming through the kind of final couple of turns. I think Andy Boardman, possibly, if he doesn't take tyres, might be able to do this. It's a long pit exit, though, as we see Mulder and Kerrigan. I think Mulder's definitely got that one secured this time by, but it looks like gone a little bit wide. Can Kerrigan get the speed off the corner? I don't think he can. Mulder there up into P12, Kerrigan down into P13, and here comes Christopher Streppen. Track map on the right hand side, live gap on the left, and this is where Andy Boardman is. It's a long drag down the pit lane, the limiter right at the end. Here comes Christopher Streppen through turns 1 and 2. He goes. The pit board there on the exit. Look to the right hand side. There is Andy Boardman in the background. Christopher Streppen to the head of the field, some 2.5 to 3 seconds nearly on Andy Boardman, and Klaus Nyring also closer to Boardman than he once was before the pit stop. So despite not having a mandatory pit stop enforced in the server mat, it looks like most drivers have taken a stop of some sense, and it's really kind of thrown the field about somewhat.
Yeah, it certainly has. It's just throwing a few things off from the order. There's still yet to make sure that there's anybody else that is yet to stop. With it 24 minutes left remaining, it's still anybody's game. But if you remember rightly, there's still a good chance that Boardman can catch back up to Verstappen as we go into the car number 750. Ricato is trying to chase down Redford at P15. It seems like Redford's manager able to get himself back up after taking the early stop. So it looks like Redford's able to get the better exit off from that turn. So Redford's got to keep himself preoccupied going through into the latter stages of the race, because he will be on very old tires on a very high fuel load as well. See, Ricardo is trying to find space on the inside, but Redford's not having any of it. He's going to try and make sure he can hold on to that P15 as best as he can. Because again, if he can catch that, he can potentially catch Kerrigan at P14 if he has the pace.
Yeah, absolutely so. I mean, Redford's tyres, like you say, very old in comparison to Ricciardo's. I mean, Ricciardo down the lane lap 15, Redford down the lane lap 2. So a good chunk of miles, should we say, not in the Pirellis of Ricciardo's in comparison to Redford. So in theory, the number 750 should just have to play the long game here, wait out another 15 minutes or so, wait for those Pirellis really to drop off that cliff, and then hopefully use some performance that you've kept in your own tyres to then sail on past Redford up into P15. Of course, if Kerrigan and Byron start squabbling, that again could drag these two into it. And even towards the back of the field, we've still got Kalyanov and Brunier together, the number 668 and the number 63, still haven't separated as they come through the last couple of turns. So Sawyer's racing team really putting on a good display, putting it to the nearly on pace driver of Sebastian Brunier. Of course, his inaugural round, should we say, back into the RCI realm of things. So Great to see Seb running so well, especially after the early lap one incident that he had. Opens the door to the turn one, though, and the swooping line around the outside, enough to carry speed ahead of the number 63. And Sebastian Brunier remains safe once again through turn one towards 4, 5, and 6. I don't know if Kalyanov is going to be close enough. He's constantly looking, isn't he? Finds a BMW-sized gap, puts it to the inside of Sebastian, but the outside becomes the inside for turn 6. The crisscross nature, cars swapping sides, and Kalyanov now has the inside commanding line towards turn 8. Sebastian's run a little bit hampered as they're rubbing. They come together. That's Kalyanov off to driver's right. Sebastian spins as well, and that's one of the Sim Brothers cars coming through of one of the Lundqvists, I think, and that is detrimental to the French driver and, of course, Kalyanov in the number 63. And it looked like neither driver, Matt, wanting to yield. I mean, Kalyanov wanted to come right. Sebastian wanted to kind of shorten up the line into turn 8, of course, force him down as low as he could to, of course, try and hamper the run as much as possible. And 2 into 1, it's that classic thing. It just doesn't go.
No, it's almost like both of the drivers didn't know what the other one was doing. It's just one of those things that does happen, unfortunately. It's like you might be thinking they're going to do one thing, stick to the inside, but sometimes they might want to go in the middle of the track. You just can't tell from each other. Just unfortunate for those things to happen. You can see Lindgaard's trying to find that little bit of space to get past Franken. Is he going to try and do the same move from earlier, but he just can't. What he has to do is try and maximize those exits, try and get the maximum speed in order to not only catch up, but also make the pass going through into the next corner. But it doesn't look like he's able to go and to do that this time, but it all really sort of depends on how he can get round for the rest of the track. You can see from just up ahead, you can see as the traffic's starting to spread out among some of the other drivers as well, with gaps being about 2 to 3 seconds between most of the drivers. As you can see as well, even with Boardman, he's actually closing the gap very slowly from the looks of it. It looks like he gained about a good few tenths over the last couple of laps since he came out of the pit lane itself. You see Matt Stevens tried to make a gap on the inside towards Ricato, and was he trying to get in amongst there on the battle for P15. Got Jay Manso and Mulder from the looks of it side by side, but looks like he's just gone a little bit too wide. So he's not able to hold on towards him as Manso keeps going forward. Sorry, I got reading that wrong. It's Nordqvist that went a little bit wide on it instead. It looks like Nordqvist's car is a little bit squirrely, I would say. So I don't think he took tires from the looks of it.
Yeah, say Nordqvist glued to the back of Manzo. It's a good kind of team rivalry. Sim Brothers as we go 3 wide into the last corner. Oh. That's Redford getting sandwiched between Ricciardo and that was Matt Stevens, I think, the torpedo on the inside, the RPMS Simsport car. Let's have a look. Slow runs off of turn 14. Through 15 they go. Ricciardo back around the outside. Stevens sees a gap up the inside. Unfortunately, Redford nowhere really to go to give Stevens the space, and a bump from the left-hand side, and it's kind of a concertina across the track, and Ricciardo, the worst driver, comes off the track and onto the grass he goes, and Redford gets underway with Stevens, of course, slingshotting through, and Stevens already in the eye of the stewards once tonight, and he's certainly going to be back into the eye of them again, and wondering how they are going to deem that one. It's too close, it's too awkward to call almost up here in the box, because you don't see the amount of detail, of course, that stewards would look at with inputs, throttle brakes. You know, where did Stevens brake last lap? Where has he broken the whole race? Has he adjusted his point? Was it a very late ambitious lunge? Certainly was from where we were sat. Nordqvist still on the back of Manzo here. Hopefully we're not going to see a coming together between these two, but again, lots of argy-bargy here tonight. We're going to see plenty of BMW panel work supplied, I'm sure, across this championship as Manzo overcooks 13. That's going to allow Nordqvist around the long way, takes off the track to get the position. Wondering if ACC is going to pick that one up as a track warning, but Nordqvist now up into P10, Manzo down to P11, and Ollie Mulder lurking in the background. Should this one kick off, once again, Mulder could be the successor here. Of course, he's closing the gap ever so often through these last few laps. 1.4 seconds to the good is Mulder behind, and of course they've got a big gap to Rob Franken ahead, 5.7 seconds on that one. So going to be a big ask for Nicholas Nordqvist to break away from Yao Manzo, especially with Manzo much better run through 4 and 5, although hampered himself towards 6, but tries to go for that exit speed and certainly gets 6 hooked up. And here he comes, Manzo to the inside of turn 8. Nicholas Nordqvist around the outside. I'm not sure if Nicholas even saw that one coming. He didn't really pull over to defend the line, maybe trying to do the old switcheroo, the old up and under, but of course the outside will prevail just into turn 9 and 10. They're getting very close indeed. Manzo still with a wheel or so overlap both last to the late breakers.
He's got a little bit of too wide there.
All over the marbles, and here comes Ollie Mulder up the inside. 1.4 seconds to the good, and that gap has dwindled to absolutely nothing, and this now becomes a three-way fight for P10 overall.
Yeah, it just goes to show to you, like, even just ruining the momentum can bring that gap sizably down as well. So you can see with the freeway fight for P10, it's going to be a lively one right to the end of the race, because if that's a slide from Manzo as Nordqvist is trying to take a full advantage of it, but so is Mulder. So again, with Manzo sliding about a little bit more than usual, that it could be that either Nordqvist or Mulder might have the better opportunity going through into the final stages of this race. You can see as well, Andy Borman's also cut down that gap as well by another second, by nearly a second, I want to say, because originally the last time we looked at it was 3 seconds. Now it's dropped down to nearly 2 seconds. They're currently 2.1. But as well as that, you've got some of the other ones at the back as well, starting to close in on each other to try and get those final places, to get those extra little points that can mean the difference between either getting yourself P5 or even a P4 in the standings, depending on where you are on it. You got as well, all three drivers here seem to have it really good on the exit point here, so there's not really much going to be overtaking wise, unless one decides to go a little bit more deeper. It looks like that Nordqvist is trying to get on the inside line, trying to make himself sure he can get the better line, get the better traction off through those exits. Again, he might be taking a wider line, but could still give you the better opportunity going through turn 10 up to the straight towards turn 11 if he can plant it right. But it looks like he might not have the proper traction, which means Mulder might actually have. Yes, he's got the better opportunity going through towards turn 11. He's on that inside line. His bumper's there, but he's not going to be able to prevail into getting that P11 spot.
Yeah, I spoke earlier, of course, about, bravery and, how precise you have to be here at Misano, and lots of drivers kind of backing out of the moves through 11, 12 and 13, realizing and understanding that it's normally a single file corner and that there are better places around the circuit to certainly make a pass. And Nordqvist looking very racy towards the back of Manzo. He's closed that gap up somewhat in the last half a lap or so. Mulder, of course, breaking away a little bit just in the background there, although going to be very close indeed as they all take very different lines through turn 1. Lots of curb for some, not so much curb for others. And in the background, Matthias Byron, another Sim Brothers racing car. Of course, he is now lurking where Oliver Mulder was, of course, just a few laps ago before he was brought into the fight for this P10 position. But Manzo doing a fantastic job so far of fending off the charging Swede behind. And of course, Mulder struggling to keep with the pack, and Manzo moving over to the left. He's breaking the toe. He's trying to kind of, disadvantage Nordqvist as much as he can. He doesn't want to give him that kind of slipstream effect that, of course, kicks in around about 0.6 seconds in ACC is the typical kind of window that we see. So Nordqvist being within 0.3, 0.4 or so, certainly going to be getting some kind of benefit off the back of the RPMS SimSport car. And Mulder's car definitely looks a little bit better towards the mid half of the lap, but certainly loses it coming down towards the latter half and, of course, the first half of the lap. But this man here, forgotten a little bit about him while we've been talking about Manzo, and catching a race replay here of Christoph Verstappen. This is through turn 14. This is the hairpin. I'm wondering what we're going to be seeing here. Is there considerable time loss for Chris as he comes over the curb? Looks relatively tidy so far. Tips it into the last corner. Over the exit curb he goes and head straight line towards the start finish line. So Stewie reckoning in our ears that he's spotted possibly a big time loss from Verstappen. Lost nearly a second to Andy Boardman in the number 69 behind that black and M Sport coloured car in the background as they come through turn 8. Of course, a little bit of traffic ahead. That's the form of Martin Foster, if my eyes aren't mistaking me. He's currently down in P23. So again, should be a fairly easy textbook move for Chris to get around the slower cars. But again, traffic giveth and traffic taketh away, as the rule in endurance racing goes, and certainly no different in some of these sprint races. So Chris with some time loss. Andy Boardman still on a charge. Gap remains at about 2 seconds across this lap. So whatever was bothering Chris certainly hasn't bothered him anymore in the lap. Still pulling away from Nyring, 3.4 seconds to the good. And Martin Lawrence, who we've not really spoken about, has managed to sneak his way up into P4, Matt.
Yeah, certainly. He's done. I think he's got himself the better strategy. I don't think he stopped at all. I don't remember seeing him making a stop. If he had, he certainly had taken a better advantage than some of the other drivers here tonight. 10 minutes ago, and there's everything on the line. Everybody's got to try and get in their places and try and get those last-minute gaps in so they can able to get themselves up into the better spot. See Kerrigan and Stevens all trying to fight towards that crucial P14 spot. Kerrigan has the better, faster line on the outside, while Stevens has the more opportunistic inside line. He breaks a little bit later, but he gets it a little bit squarely from Stevens. He brings him too wide, which means Kerrigan is able to take the inside line and has a better opportunity trying to get ahead to stop the overtake. Stevens will try and get himself into another position to get him back on there. Mulder as well is on the back of Nordqvist, trying to get the crucial lineups and try and get himself in a better spot for the output to either outbreak him or try and get him to make a mistake. Going through turn 2, he's able to keep it nice and clean. He certainly does. So in that way, it gives him the good opportunity to try and go around and try and make sure he can get through onto turn 3. It all depends on how well he can get around those corners, because at the end of the day, if he can have those better exits, which he looks like he has slightly, if he can able to get himself through the better exit onto this point here, he can able to then get on along the side of him, try and get on the inside line and try and get that overtake done. To come up towards that turn 8, he's going to be trying to see if he can go along on the outside, try and keep a little bit more speed. No, he's going to try and go on the inside line and try and get himself a better opportunity, but he's not able to make the pass stick. Come through turn 9, turn 10, it's all crucial as to how he's able to set this up. If he sets this up right, and if Nordqvist can alter a little bit, he might be able to take the straight, but it looks like both those cars keeps it nice and clean for that straight.
Yeah, nice clean exits out of turn 10, but not so clean. Matt Stevens and Callum Kerrigan have a coming together. That's coming into turns 9 and 10. Kerrigan towards the outside, Stevens on the inside, tries the big lunge, and there just isn't enough brakes in the world to draw up that M2.
Just
and I
not
think
enough grip, I'd say. Yeah,
ABS certainly playing a part for these drivers today, as Andy Boardman gets very loose through turns 5 and gets a cleaner run, should we say, out of turn 6, but certainly pedaling that car. 1.6 seconds the gap has come down to, 4/10 shaved off in the last 2 minutes or so. It's going to be a big ask to catch Christoph Verstappen, let alone get past him. But I think Matt Stevens saw a gap. He tried to trail brake the car in, and the ABS just fighting him all the way into the door of Callum Kerrigan there. And certainly going to be a bit of a different learning curve for a lot of these drivers, of course, used to the GT3 machinery. Some again have stepped out of the RCI community 6 hours that we hosted on Saturday. Again, maybe not used to the reduced downforce levels, the reduced electronics that these cup cars, of course, provide, as Christoph Verstappen meets some more traffic along the way. That's Verzakov ahead in the number 74. Good heads-up driving from Verzakov. Already got the indicator on 2 corners before we even started mentioning that. So staying way out of the way of the lead fight is Verzikov. Good heads-up driving there once again. Stevens tries the inside of turn 8 this time. Not going to make that massive late lunge. Probably playing on his mind now, isn't it, Matt? It's more of a psychological game at this point for Stevens, knowing that he's tried it once before, and if he tries it again, it could end doubly bad for both drivers in this fight. And this is all for P14 overall. This isn't even like a podium fight we're witnessing right now, but these guys going door to door every inch of the way.
No, definitely is. I think it's not always about the podiums. It's not always about the wins. It's always about the racing. That's what matters here. Doesn't matter if you're gonna win a race. If you're gonna be bored about it, then what's the point in trying to be here? But again, here in RCI, the racing is always jam-packed with lots of fun, lots of excitement, as you can see here today. Doesn't matter not whether you're in P1 or P16, the excitement will come to you no matter where you are on the grid. You see Mulder is trying to maybe look on the inside line at turn 1, but he's not going to go for it just yet. You can maybe find a better spot to get past Nordqvist going through later in the lap. I think he's starting to see where the weaknesses are coming from Nordqvist. So if he's going to be an opportunity, there has to be one very soon.
Putting under pressure, Ollie Mulder, of course, Nicholas Nordqvist. These two have been glued together for pretty much the majority of the second half of this race, and Yamanzo is allowed to escape up the road just about a second or so to the good. Flicking back, of course, to the Matt Stevens and Callum Kerrigan fight. They're still locked bumper to bumper, and a tighter line there from Matt Stevens. Could this be the momentum propel that he needs? Kerrigan's already on the defensive, coming through the kink of turn 7, down towards 8, the last of the late breakers again. It's the high sides that hasn't been working all race, but can Stevens find the edge ahead of Kerrigan, using the lower line to suck the car through? And again, still side by side towards turns 9 and 10, and Stevens this time has much more room to work with than he once did. Kerrigan still sticking it to the outside, trying the old up and under. Stevens jumping on the power early, dragging himself towards the exit curb, and the move has been signed, sealed and delivered, I would say, and that was set up some 3 corners prior. And a weave and a flash of the lights there from Callum Kerrigan. I'm sure that was more of a GG kind of thing than a frustration flash, I would say, Matt.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think after some hard racing like that, you can only just say congratulations to the guy that you may have passed or have passed you. You see, Andy Borman's still trying to get a little bit closer, but with very little time left, he needs to pick up the pace if he aims to get the win. Gap's now 1.1 seconds, but you can see with the last lap, Andy Borman's able to catch him by 3 tenths last lap. So maybe Andy Borman's taking fresher tires and is in a better opportunity to maybe win the race than say Verstappen. But the track position on a track like this, where it's hard to overtake with this much time, I think Verstappen might have signed the deal for getting the win on this one.
Yeah, never say never, I would say, in these types of Monday races, but Boardman certainly closing the gap down a little bit more, just under a second through the last timing gate, so he is edging closer, but I don't think he's going to have enough in the tank to really stick it to Christoph Verstappen in the 747, but he'll never say never, as I just said, because sometimes it does throw the curveball in the mix, and we do see drivers coming together where we don't always expect to see them. As you said, just over 3 minutes on the clock remaining. Logically, at the lap times they are running, of course, that should be 2 more laps to go. Of course, next time being the white flag and then the checker. Of course, traffic ahead, that's in the form of a Sim Brothers entry car. I can only assume that's going to be Alphonse Lundqvist in the number 75 entry, and it is indeed. Thank you very much, Stewie, on the left-hand side of your screen. So again, traffic giveth and traffic taketh away, and I think we're going to see some heads-up driving once again going on here. The back markers today seem very kind of compliant and cooperative in that sense. Blue flag already being waved by the in-game marshals. So again, Lundqvist is going to have that heads-up on the Lumi rank in the car. Of course, that's in the center air vent. You can just see behind the seatbelt inside Andy Borman's car. That's going to be flashing blue constantly for him. So he should be very aware by the time the 747 gets onto the back that there is a car there, and pulling off to the right-hand side. Going to be backing out the throttle somewhat. as they come up to turns 11, 12, and 13. As a late penalty comes in there, Lundqvist dab of the brakes to let Andy Boardman through, and that remains the lead battle going on once again. But plenty of stewards decisions coming through quite late in the race at the moment. Heading over to the channel, it's for quite a lengthy one between the 77, the 95, and the 750, which netted 10 seconds for the 77. That's Matt Stevens. That was for the last corner incident, where we saw, of course, Ricciardo and Redford kind of banging together, and Christoph Verstappen going wide at the last turn. And that's brought Andy Boardman really into the mix now as they come across the line. 2.5 tenths of a second separate your race leaders. 59 minutes of racing nearly, and it comes down to the final lap here. Andy Boardman in the number 69 behind Christoph Verstappen. We're riding on board with, looking out over his rear wing. And Boardman, we know, is good through 4, 5, and 6. And you can see how much he closes up already through 4. Through 5 they go relatively the same, but it's all about the run out of 6. And Boardman looks much, much tighter as he goes over the inside curb, but not enough to draw alongside through 7 down towards 8. They will remain in single file. Christoph, though, on the defensive, already senses something. The overlap comes from Boardman on the outside, not able to get down to the apex. A big slide there. That's a good time loss. That's going to allow Verstappen a little edge into 9 and 10 to not be able to cover off the inside line. Boardman goes wide, goes for the old up and under, and I think he's read it perfectly. The door opens. Boardman side by side with Verstappen now as they come out of turn 10. It's a long drag down to 11, 12, and 13, and we've seen Boardman lose out here on the straights before, but I think he's done just about enough. Blocks the inside line through 11. Christoph jerks to the outside for 12. Shallows up Boardman into 13. Is he sizing up a move in 14? Boardman plonks the car in the middle of the road. Verstappen goes wide to the inside. Andy Boardman once again hugs the slow line of the apex. Both drivers getting loose as they come out of 13 towards 14 and 15. They will go, and I think Andy Boardman has done just about enough to fend off Christoph Verstappen for half a lap. He read the situation perfectly into turn 10, and round 1 will go to Andy Boardman in the greased Weasel racing car, followed very closely by Christoph Verstappen. Klaus Neuring comes through in 3rd to take the final step of the podium, followed by Martin Lawrence somewhere in the background. But Matt, that was a perfect final lap. Andy Boardman read that situation, saw the gap, went for it, and did just about enough through the final sector to take that top step today.
Yeah, that was perfect calculation from Andy Boardman today. Definitely took the advantage of what I'm watching Verstappen, see where he was able to get the most time gained on him. And I think you saw in the second last lap there was a little bit of squirreling from Verstappen at turn 10. So I think when Boardman saw that, he knew he had to take full advantage to get them as much of that momentum as he can to turn 10 onto the straight. See where the rest of the drivers coming by with Brian is coming in along with Kerrigan up ahead of Stevens. But again, both Stevens and Ricciardo both have their time penalties, so that will all be determined once the timings all have been completed. P17, you have Richard Phillips at P17 along with Mike Redford at P18, as well as they go across the line with Lundqvist and Sebastian Brunner at P19 and P20.
Yeah, of course, last 2 cars to come across the line. Peter Lundqvist and Sebastian Brunier in the 999, sorry, and the 668 nearly on pace driver. Despite the lap 1 calamity, still managed to fight back to P20, and in theory the next screen we will see should be the final results for today. Of course, pending any further post-race reports or anything that the stewards are, of course, working through at the moment, but it was Andy Boardman to take the top step of the podium today. Christoph Verstappen some 2 tenths behind. That's how close it was coming down to the last lap. Klaus Neuring, followed by Martin Lawrence and Raphael Huell, round out your top 5. Tom Shipston and Les Stevenson, they fought pretty much hard for the most of the early stage of the race. Christian Lindgren, Rob Franken and Yao Manzo just about managed to fend off Nicholas Nordqvist and Ollie Mulder in their squabble. Matthias Byron wasn't able to get onto the back of that fight. Callum Kerrigan and Richard Phillips Of course, it was Matt Stevens actually fighting with Callum Kerrigan, although time penalty shuffled him down the order. Stefano Ricciardo in P16, Matt Stevens in P17, Mike Redford in P18, Peter Lundqvist in P19, Sebastian Brunier in P20, Alphonse Lundqvist in P21, Berzakov 22nd, Foster 23rd, Varga managed to finish the race despite those two big contacts with the Armco that we saw through the mid stage of the race, and Kalyanov coming through in P25. Raya unfortunately did not finish. 27 sign-ups for this championship, 26 started and 25 finished, so very good numbers there if I say so myself. Of course, time penalties down the right hand side of your screen, being Ricciardo and Stevens shuffled down the order towards the end there. But for round one, for such a smaller grid, shall we say, than what we're used to here on RCI Mondays, I think that was a perfect race to kick off the TCX season. And of course, we'll be here every Monday with you on RCI TV as, of course, the calendar progresses through the season. Of course, as Matt touched on earlier, it's a very, very nice calendar coming up that does suit these cars nicely. So next week we head to the Red Bull Ring. Before round three, we see ourselves at Monza. So expect to see a few slipstream battles maybe between all of the team outfits that we have on the grid today. Round four, we head to Zolder. Typically tight, twisty, touring car-esque track, big curbs to launch over. That should be lots of fun. Nürburgring GP will play host to round five before we round off in Spa. That's on October 7th. So it's a good month or so of racing here in the TCX class. So if you do want to get involved, head on over to the website. That's racerci.com. And of course, calendar this week looking very packed, with Wednesday seeing the continuation of the iRacing Multi-Class Sprint Season 1. Of course, Thursday should see our GT4 Sprint Season 1 begin at Brands Hatch. Currently, 14 drivers were signed up as of last night, including myself and Matt. So if you do want to get involved with the commentary team, then do so. Head on into Thursdays for that one. And of course, Saturday this week is the big one. It's the return of the RCI 6-hour esports championship, where you can join us here on RCI TV. That's on both Twitch and YouTube for all of the action, featuring some of your favorite teams, including Veloce, Samantha Tan Racing, West Competition Racing, Renvelton, Team Nitro, and Williams, just to name a few, and plenty more on the sign-up sheet yet. 6 rounds, limited tyre sets, a custom BOP, plus 8,000 euros on the line. This will be one you do not want to miss. We head to Kyalami for round one. That's on Saturday, so keep your eyes peeled on that one. And of course, last night, Saturday Night Owl Season 19 sign-ups also opened on the website. So if you are one of our Night Owl regulars and want to get involved, I'm sure you've already spotted that. Alternatively, if you're listening to us and you think, I'm in an odd time zone, where can I race? Well, Saturday Night Owl is just the one for you. The RCO website, of course, converting all the times to your local time zone. So very easy to figure out when you can and cannot race. Of course, a big thank you to you guys at home. Of course, none of this would be possible without you, whether you're watching, you're lurking, you're racing, you're part of the community. We'd like to thank each and every one of you. And if you do want to get involved with us here at RCI, of course, you can check out the staff vacancies channel in the Discord. Of course, we're always on the hunt for commentators, broadcasters, and stewards, which I'm told you can never have enough stewards. So if you do want to get involved, head on over to the relevant channel and get involved there. And of course, lastly but no means least, a big thank you to our partners. Of course, they've been cycling around in the bottom left-hand side of your screen as the broadcast has been going on. Of course, AK Esports, a top provider of premium esports services and equipment, offering everything you need to elevate your competitive gaming experience, from high-performance hardware to expert coaching and also event management, plus, of course, hosting our servers here at RCI. Go Setups, of course, needs no explanation. I think everybody knows who Go Setups are, but providing expertly crafted car setups tailored to help you get the most out of your racing in titles such as Assetto Corsa and, of course, Assetto Corsa Competizione. And, of course, lastly but no means least, a new partner for us this year, Moser Racing, who we are thrilled to partner with here at RCI. Of course, a leader in high-quality sim racing gear, from precision engineered steering wheels to durable pedals and, of course, advanced wheelbases. Moser Racing has everything you need to boost your racing experience. and of course at a very competitive price as well. Some new lines have been previewed and launched at Gamescom this week. That's all over on their website, so check them out, including a very tasty set of pedals that I myself have my eye on. But of course, we'd like to thank each and every one of you for joining us. Of course, that will be the end of tonight's broadcast here on RCI TV. Be sure to hit that subscribe button to follow when, of course, we're next going live and get a preview in your sub box for that one. So thank you to each and every one of you. From myself, of course, John Dalton, from Matt Malcolm alongside me, from Stewie behind the cameras, and of course, all of our live stewards. We'd like to thank you very much for joining us, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of the week. And we will see you back here on RCI TV on Saturday, of course, for the 6 hours esports championship. Take care.